Hello and welcome back to the Freedom Network. My name is Troy Colmer, and we're here to give you all the tools that you need to become self-empowered and limitless so that you can finish this year off in the best possible shape of your life. And today I've got here again my good mate Jeffrey Jeffcoat. Yeah, Jeff's a wealth of knowledge and has done a lot of research on a lot of things. And if you listen to the last two podcasts, you'll know that he's been through a lot of traumas and made a lot of had a lot of indiscretions, a lot of things happened in his life, and now he's just pulled right through and guns are blazing. He's also helping a lot of men out there with their issues because Geoff knows what it's like to go through all these things. And Geoff, if someone wanted to reach out to you, would you be happy with that, or
Yeah,
would you?
absolutely.
Yeah, and how would they do that?
They can either do text message or phone calls, whichever one suits.
Or just they send you a message from Facebook?
Yeah, through Messenger, that's fine.
Yeah, so Jeff Coat on Facebook.
Yes, I'd have to double check it.
Yeah, yeah, you'll see him.
Yeah, he'll find.
Yeah, so yeah,
We're friends with Troy anyway.
if you're a man struggling, feel free to reach out to Jeff. He's got a heap of things that he can help you with. Um,
Absolutely, we've all
yeah,
been there.
and he will also be helping me with the men's network, which will it's probably about a month away at the moment, because we're busily working on the women's network first. And yeah, Jeff. So today I think we're going to be talking a bit about life in general and ego and relationships and all those things because now Jeff's an expert. He's been through all those things.
Well, I'm going in a good direction. I know that much.
All right, yeah, no, you're going on real. So how would you like to start, Jeff? You want to start with we'll start with it. What about the ego thing? You're right into this ego thing.
Yeah, I am. A lot of people have told me that I've always had one, and you know, the meaning behind ego for me now is probably a long way away from the dictionary version or how people would say, "Oh, he's got a massive ego" and things like that. Feeling good about yourself can and being really confident can portray someone having an ego. That's the way I probably would relate the social version of it. But for me, it's a bit more of a deeper meaning. The ego now is I studied with, well, I read a few books from Eckhart Tolle, which really opened my eyes to the ego and who we think we are and who we think we become. And for me, in both of our words now, the ego could be called a false sense of self for mine, and that is the difference between potentially you identifying with your life and your life story that you've succumb to, and the two versions of that, which we'll sort of go into. Your life is you're a human being on this earth. You're a soul within there, if you sort of have that religious stature about it. But the ego would be, for mine, something that has developed through programming or habits or society as such. So, when you're born, you really don't know anything, and you're taught everything. And depending on whether you're taught spiritual ways or mainstream ways, you develop a sense of self in my eyes. So I've sort of come to this Jeffrey Jeffcoat version of myself, and I've been taught by my parents, the schools, by my first employers, and by the news and the media and government. So I've been molded into this self that acts a certain way, that believes certain things or believes certain programs or ways of being. So that's where I'm at with Jeffrey Jeffcoat. But in another way, you could potentially look at a different way to look at life. How many times have you had those inner chats where somebody's had a go at Jeffrey Jeffcoat and Jeffrey's reacted to them and said you end up in maybe an argument with someone else, but then your soul or this inner voice is going, "Oh, what'd you do that for, Geoff?" So that sort of identifies to me that there may be two parts to this: the person that acts from ego and the real you. And usually the real you is the kind one that's always wanting to help people, but sometimes you don't react that way. So as Eckhart Tolle sort of explained it to me, and as if you ever read that book, The Power of Now, that's a real eye opener to see that there's another way of looking at yourself, and there's another way of looking at life, your life and your life story, because your life story might be filled with traumas, bad choices, broken families, whereas, that doesn't have to be you. And I think these processes that you're implementing here to change people's, plant new seeds, that could be the real you. So to dissolve the ego would be to let go of all that you think you know and you think you are, to be replace that with the person you want to be.
Yeah. And so like I have a bit of a thing about it, because like I don't really believe in all the ego and all those things, because I know we're on a different journey and a different path. But for me, I just see the whole thing as a program.
Yep.
And so I just see that like everything's programmable. Like we live in a sea of energy. For me, we live in a sea of energy, and everything is, we're just made. If you could get a magnifying glass and look at us, we're just atoms buzzing around like everybody else, like everything.
Yep.
And we're all part of the flower of life. So we're all one, but then we're all broken down into others. And I think that my point of view with the ego is that it's just something we've been taught that. We've been taught that about that it's called an ego, and we've like labeled it. But like, I think if we go back to what you said about, so we're born, right? We don't know anything. So my philosophy is that we are born. That's when I believe that we're just a vehicle, and we just hold the spirit or the soul or whatever. This is what I believe.
Yep.
And so you take your first breath, and then we enter into the body, into the vehicle, and then we go all the way through life as an experience, and then we pop out at the end. So then we get to have all those experiences, and then whether we jump into another body or whatever, we don't know. I don't know. But so that's my idea of it.
Yep.
And the reason that we don't have anything at the start is because I think that if we've had all these experiences, they must all be there. But I think when we have to hop in the vehicle, we're told that we have to experience everything. So then we can't take all our old experiences with us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I
so,
agree.
and then, but we have, so I think that, but I think some of the stuff still comes over from previous lives. I think so. Because I'll give you an example, right? When I was at high school, and, I was hopeless. High school, I spent most of my time outside every classroom. I was terrible. I was disruptive and didn't want to learn, all those types of things. A normal boy thing. Anyway,
Yep.
I had this, I used to love ancient history, and I still do. I used to love it. And the teacher was, she was strange. She used to write on the chalkboard, but she could write that fast, and then you would have to try and keep up while she's writing, and then she'd be rubbing it off. Like she'd write the whole board, and you wouldn't get to the end, and she'd be rubbing it quicker than what you were writing it. And then we'd have to get tested on it, Anyway, get away from that story. But we had to do this. We had to do this. What's it called? Not experiment. Assignment. We had to do this an assignment of pretending that we lived in ancient Egypt in the
Yep.
times. And like I wrote this whole storybook, and I just pictured the whole thing inside my head, like I was in this old like an old village, and then we had all this hay and this. I just wrote, and she was just blown away by it. But for when I was recalling it, well, not recalling it, I'm saying recalling it now, but when I was writing it, it was like I was there. Like I felt like it was like I was there. I was just writing what I was experiencing at that time, and she couldn't believe it. She didn't think I wrote it. She goes, "Oh,
Yeah.
where'd you get this from?" I said, "Oh, that's come out of my head." The thing, and like she couldn't believe it wasn't the same person. That I could write something like that. But I was writing from, I felt like a place of knowing.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm thinking that. And I don't know what your thoughts are on it, but I'm thinking that we do bring things over from past lives or something. And I know, do you know a guy called Stuart Wilde? Have you read his stuff?
No.
Yeah. Well, he spent most of his life in this realm, and then he learnt techniques where he could leave this this existence where we're at now, and he could travel into all the other dimensions and visit all the things and
Yeah.
talk to all the others. Yeah, his stuff's actually quite interesting and how he did it, and he tells you how he does it. And I know two people that astro travel. You know, they go into the astral, and then you can go and they say it's you go out of your body, and then you're looking at your body from above, and then you can just go through walls like they're nothing, and
Yep.
then you can go up into the sky, and you can go anywhere you want, and you're sort of attached. But then if someone wakes you up or something, then you go boom, and you get zapped straight back in.
Yeah.
And so I think so. For my thoughts, right, is just that it's just a program. Like we're just in a program. Like we're inside a program, and we are programmable, and everything's a program. So that's why when we learn something, say we want to learn how to drive, we do it a few times, and then we program that program in, and then we know how to drive forever. Like riding a push bike, we learn to ride the bike a few times, and then we've got that forever.
Yep.
Yeah, and so everything's programmable. And then the same thing as like you said about all those things that have happened to you through your life, they're all programs that have been installed. But what you can do is the program, you actually say everything can still happen in your life. And exactly what you were saying is to let go. You have to let go of that person that you were before and become a new person. That is, I'm in total agreement with that.
Yep.
And we let go of that. And then what we do, every single, I call them folders, like all your folders and all your experiences have Wi-Fi attachments. So, and the way that we turn our Wi-Fi on is by thinking of it. So as soon as we think, it goes boom, turns on, and we stop thinking about it, turns off. But with the program, we can actually turn the Wi-Fi's off. And so then when you think of it, there's no attachment. Like you think, oh, wow, that did happen, but I don't feel anything. There's nothing there. Like there's no attachment to it.
Yep.
Yeah. And so with the ego, and I think that they've labeled the ego thing with that. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, and I agree with you there. We've probably got a couple of comments on each of those, but for me, ego and most words are just a way for some people to have an ability to identify with something.
Yeah. So what I'm getting at with it, because for me, the ego has such a negative connotation to it.
Yes.
But it could be a good thing sometimes. Like if you're trying to accomplish something, you need to have like an ego. Like if you're trying to accomplish some difficult task and there's people are resisting towards you, like you need to be a bit affirmative.
Yeah, well, you have, and that's the misconstrued way that people look at what the meaning of ego, because there's a couple of good books, and just on that, if you want to be a prominent businessman, Ryan Holiday wrote a really good book, The Ego is the Enemy in Business. So there's all different ways to look at what the ego is, but I think we're more aligned. Well, we are quite aligned. Whereas in my mind, the ego is a program that has been set forth, and that's the program you're in. So my wording may relate to that, yours as a folder, or
yeah,
probably aligns better with that. But my wording that came home to me was ego was this false sense of self, or this out of date program.
So what do you mean false sense of self? What do you mean when you say that?
Well, for me, I look at who I am, Jeffrey Jeffcoat. So I'm this soul that's in a vehicle, or if you want to.
So if we go back to the soul thing, right? So
Yep.
do you believe that, what I said, or do you believe something different? Do you believe we once on this earth, that's the end of it, or do we?
No. I 100% support that. I believe that your soul comes into this vehicle or to this appearance or this body, and it has a path to a journey to follow, and whether or not you have to accomplish things or learn things from past lives, or you are just accomplishing things this time so that you can either reincarnate to learn more things, or whether you go to other dimensions because you've succeeded as a soul, as coming home and finding yourself. So I do believe in reincarnation. Um, do we know exactly? Do I know exactly how it works? No, that's a part of the game.
I don't think anyone could know, could
Yeah.
they?
So we're all sort of having a an idea of what we think is the most plausible answer for what we know, which none of us know anything really. Where, well, for mine, I really don't know anything. Every day that I'm doing stuff, I'm learning new things, and I'm learning more about myself. That you know, and I've probably got a bit of a discussion there because I've watched a couple of the other podcasts with you and Crago and a couple of my podcasts to learn more about myself. And for me, that false sense of self could relate to who I became through making bad choices, maybe drinking too much, because I'm 50 years old, and through two parts of my life, say around the 30 years old and around the 40 years old, for a couple of those periods, I made a few poor choices and I did some wrong things. But for the other 46 years, I was this keen young apprentice. You're not allowed to say anything. I was keen at
I
some
don't know.
point.
I don't know if I put keen in front of it, but anyway.
But I was a good young bloke, and I was never on drugs, and I was never running away from home. I never do. So for 46 years of my life, I was in this program of go to school, get an apprenticeship, because I was like you, I wasn't allowed to leave school till I had an apprenticeship. So I did that. I used to ride 15 Ks on a BMX to get to some job sites. So I was always dedicated and keen and turned up. I worked 6 days a week. So for 46 years, I've been really good. And I've had a few indiscretions in that time. One, and then I've got a bit of poor health through my way of thinking. So the ego, or that false sense of self, is something that has developed potentially through my upbringing. I come from a broken family. So I thought, coming from a broken family, what are the chances? They say it's 80% chance. Well, in my case, it's 100% chance. And now I've passed that on. Now I'm a broken family with my kids.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so that false sense of self, or that ego, or that program, or that file, if you want to sort of marry those up together, they are something that develops, and then usually with people's egos, they recreate the story and they add on to that.
So do you think, if you're saying that, do you just think, because I just say because you're bringing your past into because everything's a circle, right?
Yep.
And say that you're always bringing your past into the future.
Well, you relive it and you retell the same story.
And because we have a default mode, so then 80%, 90% of the time we're running on default.
Yep.
And so if all those programs, and I think you're exactly right, that everything happens from when we're young. And this is why I have a really big thing about a really young family with kids 0 to 7. Like that, there's no rule book or anything written to say that it's so important that the kids between 0 and 7 get these critical downloads, of like all these things, because that's going to be in charge of their whole life.
Yeah, I even think
the whole life. Pardon?
I even think it goes even prior, so that when the baby's inside the mum's thoughts, the mum's vibration, and the mum's actions, and if they're in an abusive relationship with the baby's not even born, those thoughts and vibrations, they're being passed on already. So for me, it's a little bit.
I'm a little bit different with that one, because I believe that, and this probably gets a bit off kilter with people, but I believe that the baby's not, the vehicle's just getting made. The baby's not doesn't have anything yet. Doesn't have any program, no soul, no nothing.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Because that's why they've got the umbilical cord. So they're actually part of mum.
Yep.
So they're obviously getting all the genetic materials going down, but the actual soul doesn't go in until the breath.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what I believe. And because there's another thing called your birth chart. And if you go to someone that can read that, like an astrologist person, and they say your birth chart, if you give them the exact time when you were born to the second, they can do your astrological chart and then tell you your whole life what's going to be in front of you.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And so I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if they did that, if they got somebody that was already at the end and then read their thing out to see if that would have happened. Like if they, to see if that's correct. Because what I
Well,
believe is
back
if you,
testing.
pardon?
Back testing.
Yeah, yeah. Because what I believe is that if you go to one of these people, then they tell you something that's going to happen, you actually create the program to manifest it
Correct.
for it to
Yeah.
happen.
Well, plants a seed in your head.
Yeah, yeah. So you've
Think.
created that reality now that so then it has to happen.
Yep.
And so, but the interesting thing of what I was saying, why I'm saying that is because that actually starts from when you were born, not from conceivement.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, and that's it. We're all going to have a little bit skewing opinions.
Yeah, because
But
if sorry, Geoff, cut you off there, but like if the baby doesn't take a breath, well, there's no life, is there?
yeah, but look at some of the effects of when people smoke and do drugs and drink when they're that has the effect on their
Oh, yeah, on the genetic makeup, yeah.
yeah, and
But I
there's
think that
some
could
sort of
that could that could come down as a cellular thing, maybe. I don't.
yeah, potentially. It's a grey area, and again,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's only a belief of mine, and that could be that could be totally wrong. All I know is I've seen three people take their first breath, and two take their very last.
yeah,
And so when they take their very last breath, they go like this, they go, and then there's nothing. Like
yeah,
there's just flat line, like nothing. Like it's a strangest thing.
yeah. I see my grandmother's pass, and it was the same.
Yeah. And so
When
that's why I'm thinking that everything's on the breath. And
yeah,
like Wim Hof, he does the breath work, and you hear all these things, people doing breath work. Like everything's about the breath, isn't it?
yeah, 100%. You can live without water and food for a long time, but breath not so long.
Yeah, not so long. Yeah. Anyway, so sorry to cut you off there, but that's just
No, and we're all got valid points, and I think there's an alignment there of of everyone, and there's an alignment there. So we might think a little bit of this, we might think a little bit of that, because we all have different guides and different mentors. And some of mine are Hindu mystics, some of them Eckhart Tolle's a German fellow, an American guy. So we all have these external sources of knowledge passing on this great wisdom, and that seems to guide us into a direction, And
but then do you think, Geoff, that you create the reality, like you adopt that belief and then you create that reality that that's a thing?
yeah, and I understand that because I've read Ryan Holiday's book and it says the ego is the enemy, so that's then a program in my head. But the way I look at things, and I go by a spiritual feel now,
Yeah.
and that's and
So
I'm
do you believe in like angels and things like that, or?
spirit guides, things like that, universal mind, divine
Mm.
intelligence. I know these are some of your words as well.
Yeah, I think there's a universal mind. I say there's a universal mind because something has to be running the program.
Well,
But
it's
I
always
used to believe in angels and things, but now I don't know. I'm not real sure. Maybe there could be other dimensions that are close to us and we just can't see them.
yep,
Because like reading Stuart Wilde stuff and how he travels to the other dimensions, and then how and I know two people that do the astral travel. Like so maybe when they're astral travel, maybe they're in another dimension next to us.
yep,
It's just because our mind is so box thought, box thinking, because that's the whole idea of us to go to school. Sit down, be quiet, look at the front, sit down, be quiet. You do what I tell you. Sit down, be quiet. You do what I tell you. Sit down, be quiet, do what I tell you. And then it's and you're not smart unless you can remember something, because that's all the test is about memory. You got to do a test
your
and then
face.
remember it. It's not about being smart. So we never get to really think, like really deep thought about anything. We're not told to deep thought because it's all about becoming a worker and a taxpayer. Like
Yep,
that's the whole system. The
that's
whole
the
system is designed for that.
yep, and that's mainstream or matrix, whatever you want to call it. So, and that to me is where the way I describe this false sense of self.
Mm.
You're not living the life you want to live. You're living the life of all the programs that you've been had instilled. So
But do
that
you think, Geoff, that because I've worked with a lot of people now, and And that's why I totally agree with what you're saying about how we can change who we are, like overnight nearly. We can nearly
Absolutely.
overnight change who we are. And I, because it's just, and the reason that I believe it all is because it's just a program. And then as soon as I tell the people it's a program and say, let's have a look at the program, and we go through the programs, and then we just say that you do that work inside yourself, you change the program. So I show them how to change the program inside themselves. And then a different you starts a different journey because then it creates a brand new reality.
It's just a new thought.
Yeah. But it
Think
changes the actual thought. Because you remember, because did you listen to the podcast where I told you what I said about, I think it was the last one I said about how I come up with my emblem?
I got halfway through that one.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so with thought, I put a lot of thought into thought.
Yeah, and it's become a thing now.
Yeah, because where does thought come from? Like, where does it come from? Like, how does it get there? Like, what happens? And you know something strange that happened the other day, right? Well, not the other day, probably a few weeks back. Like a few things were going on, and it was a bit tough, you know. And I'd had this thought, and I've never thought it before. Or maybe when I was a teenager, I could have, because of my first 10 years weren't that great. And then after that, I sort of didn't really care about life too much. I didn't care if I was here or I wasn't. But it wasn't that I'd ever thought about taking my own life. But a couple of weeks back, I this thought come into my mind, and it said, you know what? It'd just be easy. What about if we just, we could just leave, and then wouldn't have to worry about it. Like we wouldn't have to worry about all these issues you got going.
Yeah.
And then would be no problem. And then I went, like, I had to stop for a minute and go, hang on a minute. Why am I think what? Where'd that come from? Why am I thinking that? Where'd that come from? Anyway, and I was talking to Lisa, and I didn't tell her about that.
Can I just jump in for there?
Yeah.
That's how I've used some tools and techniques within myself to say, and I've just labeled it. The one that you said, why don't we just, who cares, whatever, why don't we just check our bags? That to me is what I call the ego, or this false sense of self that doesn't help you, that runs the old pattern and this shit that goes on and on. Whereas the second voice in your head comes through as, that's the soul, that's the real Troy that knows what to do, and that knows there's more to life than thinking about this stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
but I know, Geoff, and I understand what you're saying, and that sounds very logical. But my illogical brain, and because I've done so much research into the people that are controlling us, I believe that there's some sort of they've got some sort of wavelength control thing that they send out on the lines somehow, and then we pick it up through thought. Because like even today, I was doing something, and then I thought of Dad, and then 2 seconds later he's calling me.
Yep.
Like it happens. And then I think I was talking to you the other day, and said something about Dad. Next thing he calls me.
Yep.
And so, so I believe that the thought. That's what I'm saying about thought. But I believe that they've got some sort of control somehow that they can get thought into our mind. And because why I'm saying this is, I was speaking to Lisa, and she said something along the similar lines at the same time. And I said, you know what? I just had this. She goes, yeah, I don't know. It was really weird. I had this. And then I was speaking to another lady that I've been working with, and she had the same thought, another thought of the same thing.
Yep.
About, and not that it was ever thought about doing it or anything, but it was just a thought that come through the mind. I said, that's so weird. Like it just, I don't imagine how many, what I think happens is they put this out on the wavelength, and then whoever picks it up and is in a really dark spot, they do it.
Yep.
And it knocks all these people off. And because if you listen, you remember Martin Bryant that did that shooting down in Tasmania?
Yep.
And one of the journalists or something said to him, she said, why did you do that? He goes, the voices in the head told me to do it.
Yeah.
And so, like, I don't know. I don't know if that's true or it's not true, but like, how do we all get hypnotized so easily? That's I know that because of mainstream media and all these things, but I don't know. I just feel that they've got some sort of technology. Because if you go on to Google Google patents, and you type in mind control, mate, there's that many patents on there for mind control.
Yep.
And they use them for war and all types of things. Like there's heaps of them. And so my thoughts are that there is actual something out there that's giving us thought, putting thoughts into our mind.
Well, we have something like 80,000 thoughts a day, so surely we can't make them all up on our own.
Yeah, but where do they come from? You know,
Somewhere else.
like it's weird, isn't it? Like just say you want to come up with a new idea, right? You've never experienced anything to do with this idea. Like you don't even know where you got the idea. Like for argument's sake, like my emblem.
Yep.
Like I'm thinking, like why would I even come up with that? Like why would I even think that there's a flower and there's the inverted pyramids and then there's the thought and then how does that even how's that even a thing? And if you listen to Elon Musk, he did a really good podcast with Joe Rogan. Remember he smoked the joint with Joe Rogan?
I didn't see it.
Anyway, he at that same time he may have been smoking the joint, but he said Joe asked him about something about all the ideas. He goes, I can't turn them off. He goes, they're just flowing non-stop from his mind because he is a serious implementer. He implements everything. That's why he has all these things. So the ideas, if you start implementing, more things start to flow.
Yeah.
And he just said he can't turn them off. Like he can't turn the ideas off. They just keep coming. That's how he comes up with all this stuff. And then
Sometimes in that manifesting thing, like since I started down this path, I am I enjoy receiving opportunities all the time. So
yeah.
opportunities will flow in, and if you don't take them,
Yeah, but the thing is, where do they come from?
out there somewhere else.
Yeah.
But
So that's why, and this is getting back to what you're saying before. That's why I believe in the universal mind.
Yep.
Is because I believe that it's all stored in the flower of life, right? Everything's stored in there. And then we can connect through our pineal gland because that's the all-seeing eye. If you chop our head in half, the all-seeing eye is our pineal gland and the bits around it. Like if you go into Google and have a look at half of our brain, you'll see it.
Yep.
It's they call it the all-seeing eye.
Yep.
And I think that's what connects. That's how we connect onto this network. I call it the network.
Yep.
And then that allows you to download the information.
Yeah, it's far bigger than us. There's a book that I just finished. It's called The Kybalion, and that was apparently written and depicted by Hermetides. He was the thrice god thousands of years before Egypt. And the first chapter is all his mind. It is just universal mind, and it is just an appearance from whatever thoughts and comes from the mind. So now everything that I do, and maybe this will be relative to your manifestations, everything comes from a thought, and where you get that thought from, whether your conscious mind or your conscious self decides that that's what I'm going to do, and then you program it into the subconscious, or the superconscious is the one that guides you with some of these messages from either your soul or from the hypnotic rhythm or from mind control people, but it does flow in from somewhere else. And then we enact it in this physical
form.
And
you know the Freemasons?
Yep.
And so you look at their symbol, right? It's the protractor and the square. And then if you have a look at some of their things on YouTube, not YouTube, Google images, and then you'll see one, and they've got the top of the protractor has the photon symbol in it. And so to draw my emblem, that's the exact tool that you would need.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying is they know, like all these people they know, mate. They know all this stuff. They know about they know how the whole thing works. And so
they've left messages here, whether it's scribed in stone, whether it comes through a person's enlightened messages that they may receive. There's messages of ancient wisdom that are being passed through time that some of us find now.
And that's what I was saying. Everything's stored. Like I think everything's there, and there's a thought form now that people are talking about that like we're at the end of time. Like not time because the controlling body's doing to us. We're not talking about that AI and all that stuff. I mean the whole of time for the universe. It's getting to like this 2,500 year cycle or something, and then some other 5,500 year cycle, and another 256 cycle, or like all these cycles are coming to the end in the next between now and another 40 years. And so then we change over into some other cycle.
Yeah, and a good doco on that. Greg Braden. Have you heard
Greg
of him?
Braden. Yeah.
Oh, he's amazing.
He's so good at that, isn't he?
He's got a documentary that's got 48 episodes, which absolutely debunks just about everything that modern people have said.
Yeah. On Gaia. Is that the one on Gaia?
Good guy, yeah.
Yeah. That's real. I highly recommend that to people if they want to open their mind to a different philosophy.
Well, and he's gone such.
What's that called? Missing Links.
Missing Links, that's correct.
Oh,
yeah.
See that? I just pulled that in.
Yeah. So Missing Links by Greg Braden, that gives you that supports that.
That's an excellent. That is really good, that Missing Links. And he's so good at too, the way he explains everything.
So see how we both watched that and we both never knew we watched it?
Yeah, right. Yeah, there you go.
So the same messages are out there somewhere for the people that, potentially are awakening to what that is bigger.
But I believe I say awakening. I say what's possible for us as a human. I think us as humans, we have so much power to do things like this manifesting and all that.
Yep.
We're just been held back for so long.
We can do anything.
Yeah, we've got that much power, and it's just a matter of unleashing it, really, isn't it?
Yep. I had a bit of a bloke talk to me the other day, or not a bit of a bloke, a gentleman say to me the other day in a conversation like this, he said, so if you can do anything, you can do anything. He said, yep. He said to me, can you fly? And I went, yep. And I said, not like a bird, but I can fly. I might go straight down faster than a bird, but I can certainly do whatever I want. But that's just being told what we can and can't do.
Yeah.
It gives you that inhibited thought of what you can and can't do. But that transpires to every part of your life. Oh, I can't do this because of this reason, or
the
reason why you can't do
something.
something.
You start having because what happens is we've got a default mode. And so every time you have a thought, that has to go through your folders to see what links up to it.
Yeah.
And so the good thing is when you learn something brand new, you haven't got the folder yet.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's the idea when you learn something new, and then that increases your folder set, and then that becomes your new default.
Yep. And that's what the processes that you're doing. And I'm a beginner.
That's why I say quick. This is what people don't understand. This is why once you understand it's a program, once you understand that everything's a program, and that just if it's a program, that means we can change it. That means we can change the program. And so if we learn, and it's just having the right tools. Sorry, what was that?
Why aren't I sick from not taking my thyroid? You put a seed in, and I went with it, and I've done the work after it, before it. Now I don't even think about it anymore until you bring it up, and I've got to get a test.
Yeah.
So
and there's the sick care professional telling you that you should be dead. Hang on a minute. There's nothing wrong with me.
I can't.
But if you had told him, right, and said, yeah, I'll stay on it, and he was none the wiser, and you go, yep, that's excellent. You're going good.
My dad, he's a real backyard operator.
Yeah.
Yeah. I caught up with him today because he was going to the doctor, and I went, oh, hang on, here we go. What's wrong with him? And he doesn't want to tell you, but he met me in Gympie. He said, oh, look, he's got diabetic problems. So I jumped onto a bloke that I look at to help me with my health, punched in through Dr. Google, went in, right, here's the 3 things that he's done a whole 50 years of research on diabetes. He said, do this, this, and this, and that will relieve those symptoms. So I went and drove around Gympie, bought 3 different things, met up with him in Gympie, and he goes, oh, I'm going to the doctor, but he never tells me anything. And he said, I actually did my blood pressure at home because he bought a machine.
Yeah.
And he wrote it on his hand, my dad.
Yeah.
He wrote it on his hand so he could show the doctor.
Yeah.
And he goes, but my blood pressure's right up today. And I went, maybe that was like Ken when he was going to the doctor. He's thinking, oh, what's the doctor going to tell me what's wrong with me now? So,
white coat syndrome, they call it.
And that could be it. And my dad's like, I never like going there because last time I went there, he's telling me I'm on insulin now and all this sort of thing. So I get it that he's in that way of thinking. And I've said, rightio, well, why don't we just do a balance, and change some of your diets and move on with it? And he goes, well, I'll see what the doctor says, because, they don't want to think there's another way.
No. Well, it's too hard, but it is, and especially because he's quite old now. So it's too hard to think. It's too hard to think that could be a thing. And then also what you have to do, you have to give up all that as a lie. Like that whole thing is a lie. Like that's why the sick care professionals have to stay with it, because all of their training, it's all a lie. Like it's all to push big pharma and for profit.
Yep.
And so they have to give all that up. They have to give that whole. They have to realize, that's the whole thing's a lie. And not saying that at times we do need the sick care system. We do need it, because sometimes we need to work it in parallel with what we're doing. There are some great medicines that have been like insulin, ivermectin, all these ones that are some fantastic medicines that have really helped the human race.
Yep.
So I'm not debunking the whole thing, but we could probably 20% out of the 80. So 80% could go and 20% could stay. And then if we used our food and our own mind, we could, we could live in a real utopia, the human race.
And that figure that you just had then, the 80-20, if you look at it, everything, how many people say, the 80-20 rule, live, eat 80% good, poison yourself the other 20% of the time. And I can't get that anymore. You go out for a special dinner to a restaurant and eat all this bad food and ruin the 80% of the good stuff you've done.
Yeah.
But the 80-20 rule is 80% of potentially, and again, I don't know anything, 80% of people are in the program or living this false life that they've been told to live. And one, they don't think it's possible to get outside it. And half of them don't want to because they're happy.
So what would you like? Because I've thought about it a lot too, because it's just so, like, it sounds such a fairy tale, That's why that's what I was saying to Craig. We didn't end up getting to talk about the movies, but the next one we will. That's why they put everything is in the movies. Everything, like every single thing that you can do as a human's in the movies. And because the reason that they do that is so that if someone says something, you're watching too many movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they can easily debunk every single thing you say can be debunked.
Well, look at everything. I think there's far too many diet plans out there, and all it's done is create confusion. What's the right one? So nobody knows which one to do. So which one do they do? Usually the one that tastes the best, and it's the easiest and cheapest and quickest. That's usually what people choose.
But I was just working with a lady just before I got on with this podcast with you, and because I said to her that there is no diet for any one person, because every single person has their own belief about a certain food. And so you need to do your own testing, you use yourself as an experiment, and you experiment with all these things. And then if you weigh yourself every day and then experiment with the food and experiment with different timing for eating, and then you experiment with exercising, like experiment. You go, okay, well, this has made me feel bad. Is it because it's a drug and I'm getting off it, or is it just because of that? So I have to give it a bit of time. But you do the experiment, like now she's just gun blazing, because then she worked out, right, now this and that, all the bits and pieces, put them all together.
Anything you do, no matter whether it's your diet or your way of thinking, for me, it's the intention that goes into it now. And I learned that, a big part of that intention setting was from you, way back when you had that other program that I still can't remember the name of. Set a powerful intention before everything.
Yeah. And you know why? Because we're 60% water, 60-70% water. And there's a really good experiment on YouTube. A Japanese guy did it. And they put an intention into water, like do you know it?
I've got the book.
Yeah. What's his name? He's a Japanese dude.
Yeah. I could find it too, but it's all about the adding different vibrations.
Yeah, and then they froze it, and then they looked at under a microscope, and it's got all these different crystals within it. Yeah, and so if we take that right, they're doing it as an experiment into water, but they haven't realized that we're water.
Well, we're predominantly water.
So when you create the intention, so when you create the intention, that's why when we do all our belief system, when we go to reprogram, that's why we create a very powerful intention. That's why I tell everyone, I say this very powerful intention. We need to start with this, and because then we're 60% water, and so that changes all the crystalline in your system, and then you combine that with your microbiome and all these other things. And that's how it gets to change a whole molecular. Geez, all these big words, Geoff. Molecular structure of the body. It's just, it's just crazy. And it's funny how you got that book too. But
water's the key. And
Yeah. But we're water. This is the whole thing.
water, that's
We're
right.
water and light. These two things.
There's another fellow that I follow, and Sadhguru,
Yeah.
and Indian, and in the Hinduism culture, they store their water in copper containers in still places so that it has time to settle and rest. So that when it comes into their body, it's already peaceful, it's already settled, yet
Yeah.
it's so powerful.
Oh, I
They
didn't ever
bless the
thought about
water.
that. I heard him say about it because when you put it out of your tap, he said it's rushing around all the bends and all the
Yeah,
stuff, and then
yeah,
you whack it into your cup, and
yep.
so it's out of kilter. He
And
said you should leave it overnight.
well, he does. And like
Yeah,
like
it
religion,
is a funny way to look at it.
they bless their water as well.
Yeah,
Just like religion with the church, the holy water.
yeah,
So they bless their water. So whether it's a religion, whether it's Hinduism, we're on the same path of that. We are predominantly water, and if we speak to our water nice, like one of the shops that I go to, Nurture, they've got stickers to put on your containers. I love water, and I love this because if you bless anything, like if I was to say to you, Troy, I love you, mate, this is really good, you would feel good because you mainly
yeah,
water. If I was to go, you're such and such and so and so, you'd probably
yeah,
feel a bit, and that's how they
yeah,
through that crystals. So the more good that we put out to water, to our intentions, religious people used to bless their food. Thank you, Lord, for this beautiful
yeah.
food. So they had some such good technologies, but guess who? In society, do we do that? Do we go out to McDonald's and say, "Wow, this is going to be a damn good burger. Thank you for giving me all this badness"?
Yeah, yeah.
We don't do that anymore. So the intentions that we set for ourselves with our thoughts.
And they even talk about eating. That's why the Indians, not Indian, in people from India, eat with their hands because then it gets a connection between the food. So you're already connecting with it, and then you're putting it in your mouth. So your mouth knows what's happening. But
Yep.
because we eat off utensils, so the mind doesn't know or the body doesn't know, and then until it hits the mouth, oh crap, better get going, better start eating. Yeah,
Yep.
I don't know if that's true or it's just people from India made that up. But
Well,
the other thing, Geoff, sorry, the other
yep.
thing is that I find interesting is the people in the East. Like if you go to any Eastern country, mate, they're all about sitting under a tree, the Buddhas and the things, and all about peace and love and yoga and all that. Anywhere in the West, mate, it's all about guns and blazing and fighting and like
Yep.
we're so chalk and cheese. Like I don't know why that's just it's such a weird concept.
I
Like when I went to Rome and I went to all the old churches, oh man, I was really taken back by the violence that is painted onto the ceilings. It is disgusting, some of the violence. And they got like one of these things had a this guy and he's got a whole thing of babies all around him and he's got the knife and he's stabbing it into the heart. And like the whole painting is just full of dead kids. And
madness.
and I'm just going, what? How does someone even paint that? Like that's this, but everywhere, every single painting was all about killing, stabbing, and this and that. But then you go to the West and they're all humming and they're Buddhas and rub the tummy for a wish and
I got
like there's zero violence, but yet the West is just like we're so violent.
yeah. I've got I was taught by a really clever man who's passed now, Alan Watts.
Yeah,
He painted a picture because he lived in he's a man from England, so he's from the West. So he travelled to the East and spent a lot of his time there, and he explains how how cultures made me awaken to what is that more suits me or not. Now, the way that he sort of explained it was that Hinduism from like India, if you look at them as a big play, and you look back at Hinduism, they're all dressed up, they're all gold, they're all got all these nice chariots, and they're all this meditation and belly rubbing from Buddhism and things like that. So if you look at that as a play, and then you look at, say, Eastern cultures of Chinese, he depicts that as an organism. So when you sort of relate to Chinese people, they're all their paintings are of nature, and the main focus of the painting is of a big natural scenery, and then there's a little man in there, and he's meditating.
yeah,
And then you look at, say, Western culture, and was described to me as a construct, where everything is man-made, everything's constructed, everything's built, done, and there's just go, go, go. So that helped me. That helped me decide where my flow was going. And now I meditate every day. I sometimes rub my belly, but I'm a living organism.
Yeah.
I study Taoism as well, where I'm a part of nature. I'm a
Yeah.
part of the planet. I'm not a part. I'm a part of it. I'm not something that's been made from it. So
Yeah,
that's
that's why I keep saying it. Everything's just in the flower. But I just find it, yeah, just because I know there are other things I'd like to talk about. Why from books that I've read, why that happened like that. But yeah, it's just like I was really, because I don't get it because I'm not religious at all. I haven't got any religious thing, any bones. But man, I hadn't seen violence like it. Like it was just like so bad, and yeah, I was just really taken back. But anyway, Geoff, we need to wind this one up. We've been going for a while. I think we'll have to make a part two,
yeah.
Because
Ego part two.
it's just, yeah, the ego got a hold of us, and we just went off on a tangent and
Yeah, and that's good.
ended up going around. But I think it's a good conversation to have to try and bring it to the forefront to see, so people can. So the idea is for us at Freedom Network, say, is for enlighten people.
Absolutely.
Because once you understand that everything's a program, and then you're part of the one, and then you're part of, like you're saying about nature, then if you have you get to choose. Like what we're doing is trying to give you a choice. You can stay on the hard road, as in hard, as in be within the control, or you can go the other road and become one and be in control of yourself,
Yep.
and then become self-aware and self-empowered, meaning that you get to experiment on yourself to see what your your body can actually do. And and the other thing too is like to have some sort of purpose in your life, to go for something.
Yeah.
And so,
You
yeah,
open
so
your
anyway,
mind.
so that's all the things that and I know that purpose and all things we might talk about that in the next podcast that I do with you, because that's another massive topic. So we've got a few topics to get into on the next one. But I'd like to say thanks again, Geoff, for your time, and thanks for helping out with this mission of mine of creating more. It's a massive goal, but apparently we only need 1% of the earth to raise the vibration. At 1% of the earth will raise the vibration for all.
Yep.
1%. That's all we need, just 1%. And so I'm trying to get the 1%ers on board,
Yeah, well, I'm part of it. So, and I'm happy with
Yeah.
that.
And the difference is once you understand, man, you can just feel so good.
Yeah.
I mean, all the stuff's still happening. We've got all the things going on around us, and the AI and the control and the money thing, and got all the stuff happening. But you can still work outside of that for yourself. As much as you do, as much as you can and stay out on the outside of the game. You still be part of the game, but on the outside of it anyway. So that's my thing with. I mean, that's why I'm doing the Freedom Network, is because to do the 1%.
Yeah.
So if you can help Geoff and I and become part of the 1%, even you don't have to do a lot. All you have to do is just do like Geoff and I have been talking about, and go and sit in nature, and then go and work out who you are and what do you stand for and what are your beliefs, and and then can start connecting. Wouldn't you say, Geoff? That's all you really need to do.
100%, mate. I'm not here to make anyone think, act, or do what I do. I've I've become at peace and at ease with myself. And if some of the tools that any of these great people out there have got that can help you step over the line, but all I know is Freedom Network and Troy can help you go really make it quick and effortless, and you can be on that road to a better life a lot sooner than you think.
Yeah, it can so fast. This is what every single person I work with, they go, "Oh, this is going to take a long time." I said, everybody says the same thing. And so within 4 sessions, they're like a different person.
Yeah.
Totally different. Not even close to the same.
Sometimes you got to get out of your
Yeah,
own.
it's just like, yeah, it's just so weird. But yeah, thanks again, mate. And we'll wind that up. And yeah, so we have podcast on Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays. So look out for those. We've also got our Facebook. We're on YouTube now if you want to go see what Geoff and I look like, you know. We've got a
Marketing's done me some favors.
yeah, we're on Instagram. We're trying to get everywhere to because our idea is to raise the vibration of the 1%. And we're hoping that you would like to join us with that. And yeah, thanks very much and thanks for listening.